The beginning of the third week, and an introduction to my what I call my Japanese restaurant conveyor style apparatus. Obviously, it isn't anything like a Japanese restaurant conveyor, but in my head, it is. So, what I've done is put an old wardrobe door attached to the front of the opening for the Velux, and with that, then I can store tiles after they've been cleaned, and then I go around to the front, climb up the roof, and access the tiles. So it's in fact it's nothing at all like a Japanese restaurant conveyor belt style thing, but in my head it is. So we'll leave it at that. Every tile needs a bit of a clean off. There's moss or there's soil or there's dirt or whatever on them. I'll also just check in if there's any damaged corners, or there's unfortunately lots of the weather's got to them, and the section that's exposed as sort of given way, as is shown here. So nothing really, lot you can do with those. It's a pity because there are lots and lots of them like that, and I've got it that I can afford to have about 400 damaged or broken tiles, and then after that we're at sort of critical mass, which means that I would then need to be picking some up from somewhere to finish that side of the roof, and the front roof's just in a similar sort of state. So the front roof's going to be missing X amount of tiles as well, but not as many as the rear roof, because the rear roof is about 20% larger overall than the front roof. So it's a fairly monotonous routine. I've sped this up about 5 or 6 times, so you're not having to endure hours and hours of me scraping off tiles and putting them on. But it just gives you an example of, or an indication of what you have to do to get yourself into a position where you can actually start relaying the tiles. Some of the tiles that have lost corners or whatever and can't be used, I'm going to be cutting down. I need to finish. I need to, not even really started it, but I need to redo the beginnings of the roof at the bottom. Now in the UK, we normally do it in a way that, and I'm not looking to be rude, I'm not entirely sure the terminology used, but I think it's something, I think roofers call it something like a bell end to the roof, which means that your first batten that goes on is a little bit thicker, or you double the batten, so that the very first sort of half tile that sits on that very first batten is at a slightly different angle to all the other ones. So say the angle of your pitch is, say, 30%. The angle of the first tile is going to be maybe, I don't know, 25%. So what happens is the water runs down the roof, and then it gets to the end one, it's got a slight flick up on it, which pushes it into the gutter. If there's any roofers watching this, I'm sure they'll be able to tell me exactly what the term is, but that's kind of what's in my head from years and years ago, from a guy that used to do a lot of roofing for me in the early days, a guy called Barry Core, who came from the Sutton area of South London. Excellent roofer. And I'm pretty sure it's the term he used. I could be wrong, because we're going back about 30 years now. Anyway, the idea will be that I will take off the first couple of rows of tile, which is nice and easy because it's down at sort of ground level anyway, or it's reachable from ground level. Put the new thicker batten on, and then redo, and then cut with any tiles that aren't usable for the roof but could still be cut down, because that first tile is about 60% the size of a standard tile. Obviously, it'd be much easier once I do a video and you can actually see what I'm talking about. But basically, the very first tile you ever put on the roof at the bottom is a smaller section, so that it lines up once you put the second batten on and you put the very first full tile in place. The two bottoms line up together. So you're going to be taking about 65, 70 millimeters, or just shy of 3 inches off the bottom of any tiles that I can find that are in semi-decent nick but aren't usable for the main roof. So I'll do that maybe towards the end of the week. It shouldn't take that long to do. Might be quite an interesting little video to do on that. What else to say on this? The batten and stuff that you see lying around, that's the old batten. That will be used as kindling. There's not a lot else you really can do with it. It's not good for anything else. But it makes excellent kindling. Kindling is just sort of the beginnings of wood that you use to get a fire going, particularly if you've got a wood burner. You could chop it down a little bit more. I've got a small sort of hatchet. I can shave it down a little bit so that it takes light fairly quickly, and you don't need to be using fire lighters in the wood burner, which aren't. I don't think they're particularly environmentally friendly anyway. So if you can start a fire just with the wood, obviously, or a little bit of paper, it's much better than using fire lighters, and plus it's cheaper. So there's tons and tons and tons of, as you can imagine, I think I estimated there's something around about just over a kilometre of batten which will have been put in place to batten the new roof, which means it's just over a kilometre of old batten came off the roof. What's that? I don't even know what it is. What would that be in feet and inches? It's going to be, what, about 800 yards, 700 yards. Or I don't know, I'm losing myself here. Anyway, you can work it out for yourself. I've been so used to working in metric for really ever since my apprenticeship back in 1980, when everything was already metricised as far as paving slabs and everything else were concerned. So it's always a bit awkward when I'm trying to think back in the old imperial ways. So we would say, a good kilometre of kindling there, and you're probably going to need not a great deal to get a fire going in the first place. So I mean that'd easily work its way through an entire winter's worth of kindling. And they do actually sell kindling, obviously, in the shops and that. Here I'm just showing you some of the damage that's done to some of the tiles. Sadly, I had a comment on here. Someone was saying that he'd never seen a handmade tile that had deteriorated. But I can't believe that, because we saw lots of handmade tiles in the UK that had deteriorated due to the weather, etc. So I don't know. Maybe it's different. I think maybe he was an American, and maybe it's different over there. So yeah, lots of damaged tiles. But yeah, lots of kindling, and what else to say on that? The box to the right hand side that I've stored some tiles on, that's actually the chauffe, which is the hot water tank, which obviously will be replaced because it's not been used in at least 13 years, and I should imagine it's pretty knackered by now. And I'd like to put one in slightly higher at the highest point I can, really, because obviously then gravity gives you a helping hand as far as pressure for your showers and everything else. And ordinarily, water pressure in France is very, very good. It's very, very strong water pressure in France, because more often than not, particularly in the rural areas, you get these huge water towers. So the water gets pumped up to there, and then it gets just distributed throughout the communes. So it's never ever been a problem. Having decent water pressure, where I found in Normandy or here in Loir-et-Cher, which is good. And then what will we talk about now? So this is the third week, the first day of the third week. So it's a Tuesday. Driven down from, or driven across from Paris, because it's almost directly just sort of west, rather than heading south, heading north. And what I do is, when I'm about 13 or so miles, or 30 kilometres or so from the house, there's quite a large sort of shopping centre in a town called Brew. And I stop there and I buy bread and stuff, and cheese, normally cheese. So there'll be some examples of that coming up. You can see what all I eat throughout the week that I'm here, and this is for dinner and or lunch and dinner. Because I can't really be bothered to cook by the time I get home. I just want to get to the Airbnb. I just want to get showered, have a quick bite to eat, fanny around a bit with the videos, and then go to bed ready for the next day. So doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else. So the best things in life are in France, and the best things in life are fresh bread and cheese. Can't get enough of it. I love this particular type of French cheese called Brie. Obviously, it's a Normandy cheese. It's excellent. It's, if you like the cheese that's sort of processed and it comes and it's named after a famous American town that Bruce Springsteen sang about. This is better than that, and it's actually genuine proper cheese rather than that. And also, I took the liberty of making flapjacks while I was home in Puto, which gives me a bit of energy. So I normally eat one of those through the afternoon just to help me get me going a bit more, because it's quite draining at my age. So yes, they are homemade flapjacks. I'll give you the recipe if you want. Very easy to make, very tasty, very nutritionally good for you. And then now we're outside, so I've had my dinner, I've had my lunch, and I drink, at the moment I'm drinking about 4 litres of water a day while I'm working. I'm not a massive fan of water, to be honest with you, but I always used to drink about a pint of milk a day from the age of sort of 15 up until about fairly recently. And lots of people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be drinking milk at your age; it's bad for you." Da, da, da. But I've always enjoyed the dairy products. So be it. If milk's going to get me in the end, milk's going to get me in the end. But here it's just easier to be drinking water. So I buy a big 5 litre bottle of water, which is about €1, 10 centime, which is what, less than a pound, 5 litres, and that keeps me going throughout the day. So I've moved my stairway to heaven steps slightly to the left, because obviously I'm advancing with the roof, which is good. And the roof, I'm loving the roof. It's very much a Hansel and Gretel roof, in my opinion. It's sort of higgledy-piggledy, it's here, there and everywhere, but I'm loving it. And it's just a question of moving some of these steps across, so that I can then continue working and get as near to the left-hand side of Felix as possible before the day ends. And then I had the guy that's selling the barn, him and his wife sort of dropped round. They had a vide maison on Saturday, which is where you sort of sell everything that's in your house that you don't want. And then they're quite popular in France. And I actually bought what they call a buffet, which is like a massive bit of furniture. I suppose you call it, I don't know what you call it in the UK, like a sideboard cabinet. I don't know what they call it, no idea what they call it in the United States. But it's a massive, massive bit of kit. I'm thinking, my God, that's like about 5 or 6 kitchen units all in one, obviously on base units. And I paid €40 for it. And it's like solid oak. So he was saying, he's got some other bits that nobody wanted. Would I be interested in? So I had a wander around to his, which is literally just over the road from me. So it's not too far away. And he had quite a nice sofa. It's sort of like a suede style sofa, which he wanted €60 for. And then there was another sort of buffet he had for €50. So I said, yeah, I'll take those 2 as well. What the heck? Let's be extravagant a little bit. Because I'm thinking things like that, that's practically your kitchen built as far as the base units are concerned. These units are enormous. They last forever. Obviously, you can change the doors and that so it looks better. You paint them so it looks like slightly more like a modern kitchen. But for my mind, miles better than the IKEA type crap that people buy these days. They make their kitchens out of. So I'm going to be doing that. I believe I'm going to be making quite an interesting kitchen from all the old bits and bobs that I bought. And then when I've finished, I'll be able to sit down in my two-seater canopy. They say canopies, that's a French word for settee. My two-seater settee in suede or faux leather. It's quite nice, it is. And reflect on my excellent work. So here I am, whacking the old tiles in. I play around with them a little bit just because they're all different shapes and sizes, and always trying to keep the join as close to the centre as you can. It's impossible to keep more in the centre. And the thing with this roof was that the French workers that were on it, obviously, I'd imagine there would be maybe two or three that were doing the roof at the same time. So what they've done is, as say, one starting on one end, one starting in the middle, and one starting on the far end, where they meet, invariably, they're not going to meet with a clean finish on the tiles. So practically every row had a cut tile, sort of impressively sort of cut down by however they cut them down with a hammer or some sort of slate knife. I don't know how they've done it, but it's sort of hacked away so that you end up with a tile that's somewhat thinner. It's either a lot thinner or half thinner or three-quarters thinner. But there were literally hundreds of them on this roof, and I'm trying desperately not to use any of them. I'm trying to keep it all as full tiles, which means that you have to play around. So sometimes you put a tile in, and then when you look at it, it's starting to close the gap up, and you're almost getting an overhang. So then you take that tile off, and you try and find one that's slightly wider. And I'm doing that all the way up. So when you look at the tiles, you're not going to see everything's going to be nice and perpendicular. You know, if you put a spirit level on there, you wouldn't see the same join running all the way up from top to bottom. It'd be impossible with these handmade tiles and with the varying sizes that the tiles are. But overall, they're overlapped really well, and they're not going to allow water penetration through them, which is good. But they are going to allow a lot of air through them, which is even better because air will keep the whole thing dry. And if it keeps the tiles a bit drier on the underside, then they're going to be less likely to be attacked by the frost and stuff in the coming winters, which is obviously what's happened with the redder coloured tiles over a period of time, over decades and decades. It's sat and they've held water, and then the frost has got into them and just sort of taken off the glazed face at the bottom. So everything on this roof hopefully should give it a renewed lease of life. I'm not saying it's going to last another 150 years like it already has done, but if it lasts 50 years, I'd be more than happy with that. I won't be around to see it, but I'd be more than happy with that. And then, yeah, got an airflow through there. You've got the breathable membrane, and you've got the fresh batten, and you've got galvanised nails. So there's not a whole lot really that can go wrong in real terms. It would be able to take a fair amount of weight as well, because I've added a purlin on the right hand side slightly lower down, and when I come to do the interior, when I come to do the bedrooms, I won't be putting any pressure at all on this roof. It will all be self-supported. The walls and the ceilings for the bedrooms are going to be within this loft area. So that way, then there's no additional pressures going on to the old timbers, and the timbers will get wire brushed down with the power tool, then treated to make sure there's no more woodworm still active, and then a nice varnish or whatever. And varnish will help keep the other animals out of it, other insects and stuff out of it. Got a bit of a problem at the moment with nightingales that keep, or swallows rather. Swallows keep flying in to the house, and I'm a bit wary because if they end up nesting in the house, I wouldn't be able to touch the nest. So I don't want to be encouraging them to come in, but I wanted the windows and the shutters to be left open so that the airflow, the air that's passing through from front to rear or rear to front, helps to dry out of all the very old plasterboard and all the humidity that was already in the house. The plasterboard that's on there will all get hacked off, and I'll probably just work with a lime mortar and the cob in between the timber sections. I think it looked quite nice when it's done, and you can always modernise it with a bit of artwork and stuff. But it's better than the plasterboard. Certainly downstairs, just hasn't worked at all. It just absorbs all the humidity and moisture that's in the downstairs area. Bedrooms might be a little bit different because it's a more open space. It's probably a better ventilated space, particularly with all the reluxes and that. I'd probably get away with plasterboard in the upstairs, and then downstairs it would be more traditional. So this is the end of the third week, the first day, the Tuesday. I've got back there. So very, very pleased with my Hansel and Gretel style roof. And then, as you can see down the bottom there, so the bottom rows, 2 rows will get taken off, and I'll do the batten and I'll do a video on that. And you can see lots of there's not lots, but there's quite a few of the tiles that are pinging up in the air just because they're misshaped, but that doesn't bother me in the slightest. Anyway, as ever, thanks ever so much for watching. Hope you find this enjoyable and look forward to seeing you soon.